Update 3. First, a few points to answer from the comments. I don't have any DNA test results back yet. That can take weeks. But now that I know Sophie is in no danger of dating a relative, the pressure is off. I'll get into this momentarily, but it frankly no longer matters if Luke fathered the children. I highly doubt my father-in-law is having an affair with Amy. At worst, he might know, or even just suspect, the truth about Amy and Luke. But it's also possible that he just refuses to believe they would do such a thing. I've been vague about details for privacy, but to put it very simply, Jim and Amy are both pretty white. Kat and Luke are not. Had Jim fathered Amy's babies, they would look different than they do. Nevertheless, I do have an update. While a stream of comments have called me spineless and naive, called me a sister wife, as an ex-Mormon, that hits a particular nerve, and most recently, a stream of comments have said my story is fake, fair enough, it's the internet, but Luke is not the first scumbag husband to have 2 families. Several other comments have been incredibly kind and supportive, and I really appreciate that. Apologies if I haven't responded to a comment or direct message that you sent. I covered as many as I could, but I was literally getting hundreds, so I definitely missed several of them. First things first. I discussed this in the comments, but our little team has, supposedly, recruited my mother-in-law. I say, supposedly, because Sophie and Tom were going to talk to her about getting help with submitting the DNA test and, at the advice of my lawyer, I am staying out of the process. Officially, I told Sophie not to do it, and she said she wouldn't. MIL hasn't contacted me about it either. Though we have been in touch, I'll get into that more in a moment. The bottom line is that I can honestly say I had no knowledge of any DNA test. Loophole City. Another bit of good news. I was digging through the paperwork in preparation for my divorce, wanting to get a head start against Luke, and one thing that came to my attention is that my name is on the paperwork for our home. Luke's name is not. I was the one who bought the house, and we always planned to add Luke onto the paperwork at some point, but we never got around to it, and eventually the idea was forgotten. It was my lawyer, Paige, who pointed this out to me, and it was like finding a winning lottery ticket on the ground. I don't know where I'd be without Paige. She's a dear friend from college who I reached out to, hat in hand, for help. She's been there for me this past week, not just as legal counsel but as a friend I really needed right now. The thing is, she's not our lawyer, me and Luke. We have our own family attorney who has helped us out of jams in the past. We clashed with our HOA a few years ago, not worth getting into right now, but Paige is a lawyer who specializes in family law and has handled divorces before. Luke remembers her from college and knows she went into law but doesn't know she's a divorce attorney. So I can have her over for coffee like we're catching up, and he has no idea anything is going on. Turns out, he's not the only one who can harbor someone under his spouse's nose under the guise of being a friend. So on to the update. Last time I looked in Luke's phone was 3 months ago, around the point Sophie and Tom began to go around claiming they wanted to date. I found nothing. While I know how to search for recently deleted photos and didn't see any, my comments taught me how to find recently deleted messages. So, when Luke was asleep, I did just that. Swiped his phone and brought it downstairs, checked recently deleted. I am glad I did, but I also wish I had not, because I'm still reeling from the pain. Sure enough, a conversation with Amy had been deleted. Recent texts talking about the conflict between her and me, with Amy describing me as a problem, and Luke trying to pacify her without defending me at all, to be clear. They both alluded to how they had expected this for a while and just hoped it would never happen, presumably me accusing them of having an affair. While the whole conversation and the fact that it was deleted was sketchy, nothing was actually admitted. So I scrolled a bit higher, to a few days before the fight. Amy's messages got a bit more flirty. Then I saw it. 5 days before I confronted them, Amy had sent Luke a topless pic. A selfie with no shirt or bra. Guys, I teared up. I knew it was true, I knew it in my bones, but seeing the proof still cut me like a hot knife. Doesn't help that Amy's always had bigger breasts than me. I exited the Messages app and checked Luke's recently deleted photos. Sure enough, the same selfie was there, and others. Amy topless, Amy naked, in various poses to show off. There were pictures of the two of them together, cuddled and pressed close like a couple. In some of these, she was naked. In some, they both were. There were videos. Amy sent Luke a video message of herself topless, and I had to actually hear her voice talking to him in a tone that made me sick, about how she was sending him a quick video to help him get through the day. In more than one video, she called him her boo, and, hearing her call him that, I almost vomited. Stopped looking at that point, I'd seen enough. For about 5 minutes anyway, then a strange compulsion to keep searching led me to check Luke's laptop. I knew enough of his passcodes to access his iCloud storage and yeah, basically more of the same. There were letters, long letters between them. I didn't have the heart to read past the first few lines of one of them, but I did read Luke mention our children. There were countless naked or topless selfies of Amy. Selfies of them together. Videos where Amy appeared to be masturbating. There were sex tapes. Of the two of them. Tom had previously offered to try and hide a CA. Luke was hiding a whole treasure trove under my nose all along. I scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled. There were so many. Going back years. Not all of it was even sexual. There were some photos of Amy's kids, too. One video was of Kaylee and the twins playing together when they were younger, and Luke and Amy's voices from behind the camera. There were even old pictures of Luke and Amy from when they were younger. I'd even say teenagers. I snapped. All these years, I had been telling myself I had to be wrong, that it couldn't be true. Well, it was true. I know that no one forced me to look at as much of the evidence as I did, but I'm still hurting very badly from having seen it, and in that moment, I wanted to act, so I did. I called my lawyer, who is a remarkable woman. It was the middle of the night, so I had to call her twice, and she picked up. Though I had woken her, when I asked her to come by and said it was an emergency, she agreed. I also asked her to draw up the paperwork and have it ready. She told me that she'd already had it ready since I first reached out to her. As I waited for her, I went through the necessary channels on Luke's laptop to make sure he wouldn't be able to remotely disconnect our access to his little stash, changing passwords and all that. My lawyer, let's call her Paige, arrived, and I went outside to greet her in the car. Spent a good half hour in the passenger seat just crying, and she was great about that, before I passed her Luke's phone and his laptop, with all the information she needed to use them. She warned me that this could be considered theft. So I asked her to forward and print out copies of everything she could and then bring the items back, because I just couldn't bear to do it myself. She agreed. I went back inside, and then, I packed up Luke's things while the house slept. At one point Owen got up to use the bathroom and asked me what I was doing, but I told him I was just cleaning. Luke stirred once or twice while I was in the bedroom but did not wake. I got all of his things packed into trash bags and I loaded up the car. That's when I woke him up, and told him to come outside. He was confused and half asleep, but he did notice things were missing. I ignored his questions and just told him to come with me. So he followed me outside. Once we were by the car, I pulled out the divorce papers and officially handed them to him. That was about when he figured out what I was doing, and he tried to talk me out of it. Tried to be sweet with me, to be tender. He kept insisting that he loved me and that there had never been anything with Amy. Kept trying to persuade me not to tear our family apart. Even 2 weeks ago, I might have wilted under him because the manipulation and gaslighting were truly masterclass, but I can see through it now. I didn't tell him that I knew he was full of shit, I didn't tell him what I had seen, I just told him we were finished. He tried a different approach. He refused to go. Stated firmly that our children were his too, and that even if we were separating, I had no right to just decide the kids would stay with me over him. This was where I very coldly presented the paperwork reminding him that the house is in my name, and told him under no circumstances would my kids be staying with Amy. He argued a while longer, but in the end he decided to be the bigger person and keep the peace. At that moment I didn't care where he went. Before he left, he did ask about his phone and laptop, and I waved him off by saying they were in one of the bags. Bought a little time. I couldn't sleep for the rest of that night. I cried more. Eventually I realized I'd have to wake my children up early and explain to the extent that I could. Naturally, I woke Sophie first. I told her that I had kicked her father out, and that I had discovered evidence of an affair on his devices. I did not specify what kind of evidence and she did not ask. I woke up the others and gently told them that their dad had gone to stay somewhere else for a while. That I wasn't sure where, but from now on things were going to be different. Louise was the one to ask if we were getting divorced, and I couldn't lie to her. I told her yes. Owen asked when they could see their father again and I wanted to cry. Sophie was a very big help, urging her siblings to be sympathetic to me right now and worry about Dad later. I knew better than to poison them against their father. Paige warned me against doing that as well, so I only told Sophie that the affair was confirmed since she had already been in the know. However, as the kids were getting ready for school, Owen approached me and asked me point blank if it was about Amy. If Luke was going to be with her instead of me. I couldn't answer, but I suppose that's an answer on its own. Got the kids to school, and my next step was calling to have the locks changed. I knew Luke would be back for his devices before long, but thankfully Paige returned with them before he showed up again. It was a very quick visit. She just told me that all was accomplished, and she had records of everything we would need in court. Sure enough, Luke turned up an hour later demanding to know where his laptop and phone were. I had set them back in our bedroom like they had never moved, and I just told him he had forgotten them. He insisted that I had said they were in one of the bags, so I just shrugged him off and told him I must have been mistaken. After he grabbed them, he tried again to reason with me, but I just showed him the door. I knew the kids would start to come home from school before long, and I think he was trying to delay leaving so he could see them. I was not having it. I started shouting again and sent him on his way. I'm still just in absolute pain and despair for what I saw. I don't know if he'll realize that anyone went through his devices and made copies of the evidence, but he obviously didn't say so. After he left, I cried once again. Talked to my mother-in-law that night. Apparently Luke did show up to his parents' house, which was a surprise, as I was so certain he'd stay with Amy. But maybe even he knows how suspicious that would look to the children and doesn't want to rock the boat as much. Maybe he knows I'm more likely to let my children see their grandmother than Amy at this point, and he wants to see them to give his version of events. That is not happening. Kat already shared his version with me, that he relayed to her and Jim. That I'm having some kind of mental breakdown, that he wishes he could help me, but my paranoia is causing me to lash out and turn violent. I was never violent. I shoved him away when he tried to hold me, that is all. And what's so hilarious is that he didn't mention Amy at all to his parents. He didn't even frame it as me falsely believing he was having an affair. Even though that's his story when talking to me, he left Amy out of it when talking to his parents. Kat noticed that. She believes me. Jim doesn't know what to believe anymore. According to Kat, he seemed very, very troubled by what he heard from all sides. As for Amy, she's radio silent. Tom has told Sophie that she's acting like nothing is wrong but is clearly stressed out. That when her children ask, she makes the same sort of claims. That I am having some kind of emotional, nervous breakdown, and pushing her away, as well as Luke. She doesn't mention anything about my accusing them of an affair, but still puts it all on me. Amy has not reached out to talk to me directly, and I have not tried talking to her since our big argument. I haven't really told my kids anything, just that I'm having disagreements with Luke and Amy, though I was very clear that it is not a question of my mental health. Honestly, I think they all kind of know what's going on. Sophie continues to be my rock, as I try to be for her and the others, and Tom continues to be our spy in the ranks. Right now, my biggest regret is the stress that all of this is causing on the children, which I knew it would, but it still needed to be done. My life has fallen apart. But it was never my life.